Hello everyone, I've been using this trail camera for over a year now, so I thought I would sit down and review it for anyone who might be interested. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of it as an affordable trail camera, and I'll also show you some of the footage that I've captured on it so you can get a sense of how well it works and what kinds of things it can pick up. And it goes without saying that this is all for wildlife watching. I don't think I need to say this bit, but I'm not affiliated in any way with the company that makes this trail camera. So the camera that I bought is the Assark 4K wildlife camera, and it came with a 32GB SD card. So at the time of purchase it was $74.99 and that included the SD card. Although it comes with an SD card, I wanted to use a large SD card, so I also bought a 128GB SD card. This cost me $26.40. I've left the camera for 4 weeks at a time, recording regularly on high sensitivity, and the SD card hasn't filled up. I also recorded on 4K for that. So I think for me 128 works, whereas I think the 32GB size would be too small. It uses AA batteries, so I had to of course buy some of these as well at the time, so I bought a pack for £10. Before buying this trail camera I had never used a trail cam before. I wanted it for wildlife watching and scoping out different areas, and I also wanted something affordable. So I relied very much on reviews for buying this camera, and it did have good reviews. The main preference that I had for the camera was that it was 4K. I'm thinking of making another video talking about trail camera settings for wildlife watching. The features that the camera offers that I use and that I like about the camera include being able to password protect the camera, being able to record in 4K, and the option to have different filming lengths and times between clips. Strangely enough, the first time that I used the camera, I left it for only a few days, and when I returned to it to check it, the battery was very low on the camera, so I had to change out the batteries. And the camera takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 batteries. So I was quite worried at this stage, thinking that not only was I going to have to go to the camera more regularly than I was necessarily able to, but that I would be spending a lot of money on changing the batteries every few days. However, after changing the batteries out, the next lot lasted for a good few months, and that's with the camera being on all day and all night, every day. I'm not really sure what happened the first time around, but I can now say that the battery life is excellent with this camera, so that's not something that I have to worry about now. When I first got this camera, I had the privilege of accessing some private land, and so I was able to leave my camera there for weeks and weeks at a time undisturbed, and this is why a large memory card and good battery life was really important to me. Now I tend to leave my camera for only a night at a time and always return to it the next morning to collect it, so it's less important to me now, but it's definitely something worth considering when you get the trail camera for wildlife watching in terms of how you're going to be using it. It is definitely a sturdy camera. Obviously they are designed to be sturdy, and the batteries, SD card, etc. are all inside of the camera. I've left this camera out in all weathers. It rains most of the time here, or it has done for the past year or so, and the rain never hinders the camera in any way, and it certainly doesn't damage the camera in any way because it's obviously designed to be left out in the rain. It did spend a day or two submerged in a river, which wasn't planned, but it was still working completely fine when I was able to retrieve it. There was a tiny bit of silt inside the camera when I got it back, but the SD card was fine, the batteries were fine, and it was all working fine. The screen is correct on the inside. I am not sure how this happened. It certainly wasn't from being dropped or anything like that. When I opened the camera up and saw the cracked screen, I did notice that one of the batteries opposite the screen was slightly sticking out. So all I can think is that possibly when I closed the camera, and of course you clamp it closed, is that clamping it closed forced the battery into the screen, and possibly that's what cracked the screen. It hasn't affected the use, however. It's definitely a robust camera. Okay, so let's talk about the footage itself. It does get very high quality footage that is detailed and clear. For example, look at this pheasant that was filmed during the daytime. You can see the detail and the colours clearly. So Great footage. At night it has also picked up some good shots, although of course with night vision it is slightly more grainy. Here's an example of some of the footage that it's picked up at night time. Sometimes it can be a little bit hit and miss with recording. So there have been some shots where the animal is moving away from the camera, has clearly come onto camera and then is moving off camera, but the camera hasn't caught it coming onto camera. So it can be slightly slow, I found, at picking up movement. However, more times than not, it captures everything. That's just an occasional flaw. It also captures audio, such as this badger sniffing the camera. Something which can be a bit of a pain, but I imagine the same applies to all trail cameras, is if there is very heavy rain or strong winds, the camera can pick up repeated shots of the rain falling, of the wind blowing a branch or a blade of grass or anything near to the camera, and you can end up with hundreds of clips of something blowing in the wind basically, or of the rain falling. Obviously, sensitivity levels can be changed on the camera. However, with wildlife watching, I find that using the highest sensitivity level works best, and I would prefer to not miss something and have to filter out unwanted shots than the other way around. Also, you can of course be careful where you put the camera, and you can clear any foliage from in front of it if you think that it's likely to blow a lot in any wind. Something else I like about this camera is that it's really easy to check footage when you go to collect the camera. The screen is quite clear, so it's fairly easy to see if you've captured any footage or not. The only thing I would say is that if the footage is particularly dark, don't necessarily think you haven't captured anything and delete it before taking it home and checking it on the big screen. This happened to me with some otter footage. I very nearly deleted it thinking there was nothing on it, but when I got it home I could clearly see the shape of an otter running by. So definitely worth saving the footage until you get home and checking it more carefully. As I said, I'm thinking of making another video talking about tips for using a trail cam for wildlife watching. These would just be tips that I've picked up over the past year or so of using one. I hope you found this review of my trail camera helpful. If you do have any questions about it at all, please do let me know and I'll try to reply in the comments. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.